Hi, again, this is Pastor Joseph San Jose. Titignan natin ang kwento ng Sodom and Gomorrah sa Genesis 19. But I will try to also i-condense siya as much as possible. Isa-summarize ko yung kwento. No? And then we will go to the most important verses, controversial verses of the story of Genesis 19, of Sodom and Gomorrah. And again, just a review, our method of interpretation in reading Genesis 19 is we are taking into consideration the historical, cultural context during the time that this story was written. And also, we are doing a textual analysis, meaning hihimay-himayin natin ng mabuti yung kwento ng Sodom and Gomorrah to address these anti-LGBT assumptions about this story. Sa totoo lang, ang maraming mga conservative na nagbabasa na ginagamit ang Sodom and Gomorrah, hindi nila carefully binabasa yung binabasa nila. I even doubt that they actually have read the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So, ang kwento ng Sodom and Gomorrah, summarize lang natin, balikan natin, is in Genesis chapter 19. Pero nagsisimula ang kwento nito sa previous chapter, Genesis 18, verse 16 to 33. Hindi ko na siya babasahin, ikukwento ko na lang for the intention of time and brevity of time. So sa chapter 18, after kumain nitong tatlong lalaki na nag-visit kay Abraham at kay Sarah, sila ay umalis at dumiretso papuntang sa daan na papuntang Sodom and Gomorrah. At sinundan sila ni Abraham. Ngayon, at some point, nag-isip tong tatlong lalaking ito kung sasabihin ba nila kay Abraham yung kanilang balak kung bakit sila pupunta sa city of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, this particular text is quite a little bit confusing in the sense that you don't really know if these three men are angels. In some way, para silang angels. In another way, is these three men is this God manifested in three men, in three entities? Pag binasa nyo yung chapter 18 verse 16 to 33, maintindihan nyo kung anong ibig ko sabihin. Kasi these three men are addressed to be as if they are one single entity and referred by Abraham as God or Lord. And yet there are three. And then later on, the two other men goes to Sodom, and then at the start of chapter 19, they are now referred to as angels. So may ganyang ambiguity, ano ba talaga ang nature nitong tatlong lalaking ito? Are they angels? Are they manifestation of God in three human forms? Or ano ba talaga sila? But that is also the clue that we have that this story is written by the first scribes, which we call the Yahwist scribes. At isa sa mga clues that they are written by the Yahwist scribes, na sinulat ang kwentong ito ng Yahwist tradition or Yahwist scribes because for the Yahwist, they always describe God as anthropomorphic, meaning they always describe or characterize God as human-like. No, kumakain, naglalakad, kumikilos na parang tao. At ito nga, yung ambiguity natin whether this is angels or whether this is God kasi nga tatlong lalaki ito, no, na naglalakad. So sa kwento, bago sa Genesis 19, nakipagtawaran si Abraham kasi ni-reveal sa kanya na wawasakin ng Panginoon, wawasakin ng Diyos ang Sodom at Gomorrah kasi nakarating daw sa Panginoon na maraming ginagawang hindi maganda o masama ang Sodom at Gomorrah. So punta tayo sa Genesis 18, chapter 18 verse 20. Then the Lord said, how great is the outcry against Sodom and Gomorrah, and how very grave, very serious, how very grave their sin. I must go down, singular, I must go down and see whether they have done altogether according to the outcry that has come to me. And if not, I will know. So, dito, ang description nga talaga sa Diyos ay parang tao na para bang hindi niya talaga alam, hindi talaga siya sure kung totoo yung mga naririnig niya tungkol sa Sodom at Gomorrah. At ito na nga yung ambiguity again, kasi it is in the singular and yet these are three men. So nakipagtawaran si Abraham, Lord, if I find 50 righteous people in Sodom, wawasakin mo ba ang Sodom at Gomorrah? Sabi ng Diyos, pag merong 50 mabubuting tao sa Sodom, hindi ko wawasakin. And then goes down the tawaran. Kung meron bang 40, kung meron bang 30, hanggang sa makarating sila sa 10. Kung meron bang 10 na mabubuti at righteous na tao sa Sodom, wawasakin mo ba, Panginoon, ang Sodom at Gomorrah? Sabi ng Diyos, hindi ko wawasakin. And the Lord went away. Baka tumawad pa ulit si Abraham sa less than 10. And then begins chapter 19, the actual story of Sodom and Gomorrah. Now, sabi ko kanina, sa chapter 19, at the beginning of chapter 19, verse 1, suddenly, tatlo sila, di ba? Yung dalawa na pumunta sa Sodom at Gomorrah is now referred to as angels, mga anghel. At sila ay dumating sa gate ng Sodom, at sa gate ng Sodom, andoon nakaupo si Lot, no? Yung pamangkin ni Abraham. And then, nilapitan sila ni Lot at sila ay kinumbinsi ni Lot na tumira o magpalipas ng gabi sa kanyang tahanan, sa kanyang bahay. Nung una, sabi nung dalawang anghel na hindi, ayaw namin. Doon na lang kami sa plaza, no? In the city square, in the city plaza. At doon kami magpapalipas ng gabi. Pero nakumbinsi sila ni Lot na wag doon at sumama na lang sa kanyang bahay, sa kanyang tahanan. At doon, sumama sila, ipinaghanda sila ng pagkain, pinagpahinga sila. At nung sila ay malapit ng matulog, nung sila ay matutulog na, nasusulat na dumating ang lahat ng kalalakihan mula sa pinakabata hanggang sa pinakamatanda at kumakatok sa pintuan ng bahay ni Lot. Well, basahin natin. Ito yung controversial na verse. Genesis chapter 19 verse 4. Verse 4 and following. But before they lay down, the men of the city, the men of Sodom, both young and old, all the people, take note, all the people to the last man, surrounded the house, and they called to Lot, "Where are the men who came to you tonight? Bring them out to us, so that we may know them." Lot went out of the door to the men, shut the door after him, and said, "I beg you, my brothers, do not act so wickedly. Look, I have 2 daughters who have not known a man. Let me bring them out to you, and do to them as you please. Only do not do nothing to these men, for they have come under the shelter of my roof." But they replied, "Stand back." And they said, "This fellow came here as an alien, and he would play the judge. Now we will deal worse with you," referring to Lot. "We will deal worse with you than with them. Then they pressed hard against the man not, and came near to the door to break it down. But the men inside reached out their hands and brought Lot into the house with them, and shut the door. Do we accept and believe that every single man in the city of Sodom, let's say 5,000 or 10,000 men, young and old men, all 5,000, all 10,000 of them are homosexuals? Lahat doon bakla. Niwala ba tayo doon? Is that possible? If we say that the sin of Sodom and Gomorrah is homosexuality or homosexual practices, does it mean that every single man are gay? And when we say gay, specifically gay, kasi ginagamit nga natin siya in our time today, ginagamit siya ng mga conservative Christians in our time today to mean to say that gay, as they understand it today, as we understand it today, was the sin of Sodom in ancient times, and that all of the men were homosexual. Meaning that they were attracted sexually and emotionally to other men, to the same sex. Lahat ba ng kalalakihan sa Sodom ay nalilibugan at nagkakagusto at may romantic connection? Lahat sila, bawat isa sa kanila ay ang tanging romantic at sexual attraction at satisfaction ay sa kapwa lalaki lamang nila? That's the first question. Pero hindi na natin kailangan lumayo para sagutin yung tanong. Because in the succeeding verse, yung sumunod na verse, lumabas si Lot, sa nabasa natin, lumabas si Lot, sinara niya ang pintuan at kinausap niya ang kanyang kapwa taga-Sodom, kanyang mga kapitbahay, at kanyang sinabi na, mga kapatid, huwag niyo gawin ang masamang bagay na ito sa dalawang lalaking ito na pumasok sa aking tahanan. Andito ang aking dalawang anak na babae na birhen pa, hindi pa nakaranas ng lalaki. Andito sila, ibibigay ko sila sa inyo, gawin nyo kung ano ang gusto nyong gawin sa kanila. Do as you please with them. So meaning, number one, alam ni Lot na hindi homosexual ang mga lalaki sa Sodom, ang mga kapitbahay niya, ang mga kanayon niya, ang mga kalungsod niya. Kasi bakit niya i-offer yung kanyang dalawang anak na babae na in historical context, kung babalikan tayo sa historical context, these daughters would have been between the ages of 13 years old, 12 years old, to about 16 to 18 years old. Kasi nga noon, basta't nag-menstruate na ang babae, nagkaregla na, babae na siya at pwede na siyang ipakasal at pwede na siyang ipagamit sa mga kalalakihan. So, inoffer ni Lot ang kanyang mga anak na babae between those ages, mga dalaginding, birhen, sa sangkatutak na kalalakihan ng Sodom, para lang wag kunin yung dalawang lalaki, dalawang strangers na pumasok sa kanya, na inimbitahan niyang magpalipas ng gabi sa kanyang bahay. The other curious thing about conservative Christians, they focus so much on what they assume, what they perceive to be a sexual desire of the men of Sodom towards the angels. Pero hindi nila binibigyan ng importansya yung part na yung tatay, yung magulang, ay willing ibigay ang kanyang mga anak at gawin sa kanyang mga anak na babae na pagkabata-bata ang anumang gustong gawin ng sangkatutak na lalaki. That's really a very disturbing thing from a modern mind, from someone who in this time and age will never allow a young daughter of the ages 13 to 18 years old to be allowed to be, I mean, marami nga sa atin wouldn't even allow such a daughter to have a boyfriend that young, di ba? Let alone be offered to a multitude of men, all the men of the city. Nakafocus lang yung mga conservative Christians dun sa part na ini-imagine nila na gusto na ang mga bakla ng Sodom, lahat ang lalaki sa Sodom ay bakla, ay gustong makipag-sex sa dalawang angels na borta-borta angels. So, ano implication niyan? Again, babalik tayo sa part na hindi gay, hindi homosexual yung men of Sodom. Well, at least not all of them. Hindi sila lahat gay. And I would argue, hindi talaga sila lahat. All of them are not gay, not homosexual, in the sense of having sexual and emotional attraction to the same sex, or in what we understand today as mutual consensual love or sexual intimacy between consenting adults. So, hindi sila gay. Kasi again, hindi yung offer ni Lot ang kanyang daughter sa kanila. Ngayon, punta tayo dun sa sinabi ng mga men of Sodom that, according to the translation, they wanted to know the two strangers that is in the house of Lot. The Hebrew word to know is yada or yada. I don't know the correct pronunciation, but it's yada. Yun yung to know. So sabi doon nung nabasa natin, sabi ng men of Sodom, I will read again, bring them out to us so that we may know them. So, yun yung translation sa English ng yada, that we may know them. Ngayon, sumagot si Lot. Sabi ni Lot, huwag niyo gawin ang karumal-dumal na bagay na ito. Huwag niyo gawin, don't do this wicked thing to this men that came under my roof, that is under my roof. Ang sabi ng mga lalaki, we wanted to know them. Pwede ba kayang, posible kayang nag-assume si Lot na gustong makipag-sex o gustong i-sex ng mga lalaki yung dalawang strangers? And sabi lang naman nila, we wanted to know them. Gusto na, kung translate mo sa Tagalog yung that we may know them, gusto namin silang makilala. Pero ang sagot ni Lot, do not do this wicked thing to them. Ito ang dalawa kong anak. Gawin niyo kung anong gusto niyong gawin sa kanila. It is also possible that Lot, and in this story, Lot assumed that the men of Sodom wanted to do something sexual to these two strangers. There is that possibility. Now, we do admit that in the biblical language, in the biblical text, and many other parts of the biblical text, yada, or to know, is sometimes used as a euphemism, an indirect way of saying to have sex. This is where we need to go back to the historical, cultural context of the time of Sodom and Gomorrah and the time that the book of Genesis was written. Number one, alam na natin na hindi lahat ng taga-Sodom ay gay in the way that we understand today. Pero gusto nila makipag-sex. Well, we accept the assumption na gusto nila makipag-sex sa dalawang strangers na ito. What is the context of that? Going back to what is historically and culturally known during that time. The sexual and sexuality context of the ancient Near East is that anal rape or rape of men pag ginagahasa ang kapwa lalaki, that is done as a form of torture, as a form of domination, and as a form of abuse to an enemy. And not because the one who is doing the rape, the one who's penetrating the other guy, the other man, it doesn't mean that he is emotionally and sexually attracted to that other man. No, that is not the case. Whenever male rape happens in the ancient times, it is because this is a perceived enemy and I want to torture and to dominate you and to make you, to show the world, to show the others, and to make you feel that you are an inferior man, that you are a woman. And alam din natin, the sexual context of that time is that women are second class. Women are property. Women are inferior. And for a man to be made into a woman by penetrating him is to say that you are a mababang uri ka na, babae, ginawa kitang babae, you are therefore inferior. There is nothing there that is even close to how we understand intimate relationships, consensual, mutually consensual, intimate relationship between gay men of today. It is a completely different context, understanding, perspective of today from that time. So doon natin maiintindihan ano yung konteksto nung if we accept the assumption that the men of Sodom wanted to gang rape these two strangers who came to their city na maggagabi na, they perceived them as enemies and that they wanted, again, following the assumption that it was sex, they wanted to gang rape them as a form of abuse, as a form of torture, as a form of domination. And has nothing to do with being homosexual. Knowing that, then we ask ourselves, what is actually the sin of Sodom? Ano ba talaga ang naging kasalanan ng Sodom? Again, still historical, cultural, political context of the time. In the ancient world, across all ancient societies, meron tinatawag na hospitality code. This is not some have written it down, but even before it was written, it was already known across the societies, the ancient peoples. There is this unwritten common law code of hospitality. Kasi noong unang panahon, wala namang mga sasakyan. What would usually be a 2 to 3 hours, 4 hours travel time by car, by a vehicle, would usually take you 2 to 3 to 4, 5 days na pagta-travel by foot, naglalakad, or 2 to 3 days na gamit ang kabayo or ang camel. Ang camel, hindi naman din yan kasing tuling ng kabayo. And in ancient times, very few people actually owns a horse. Owning a horse is for warrior kings, for royal families. And even that takes still a long time to travel. Depende sa layo. The other thing, alam natin sa Middle East, the Middle East has many places of wilderness in between the cities and the towns and the empires. At yung mga lugar na merong fresh water ay layo-layo, magkakalayo. And people traveling, if you are 1, 2, or 3 people traveling alone, iilan lang kayo nagte-travel, most likely, mamamatay ka sa iyong pagta-travel. Lalo na kung nakapaa ka lang, nagta-travel ka by walking. And most people back then traveled in caravans because the risk of dying through the wilderness is lumiliit yung chance of dying. And therefore, there was this common law code in the ancient times where when a traveler, particularly a lone traveler, comes to your city, town, or house, or tent, that you should receive them. If they come in peace, if they come seeking refuge, you should receive them in peace. You should receive them by offering them food, at least 1 night of accommodation. Offer them whatever food you are able to offer. Offer them water. And pag aalis na sila, mag-move on na sa kanilang travel, you are also still required to give them whatever other resources, food and water, as much as you are able. Okay? Siyempre, kung wala ka naman, ano naman i-offer mo. Pero as much as you are able to offer food, resources, and water, you should offer that to them pag paalis na sila. And anuman ang religion in the ancient Near East, whether Jewish or non-Jewish, meaning pagan religions, if you are inhospitable, kung sasalbahihin mo yung stranger na pumupunta at lumalapit sa iyo, across the religions of the ancient times, it is an unforgivable sin. And that you will receive and that you deserve punishment from the gods if you, pag sinalbahi mo ang traveler, a stranger. The nice word in English is a sojourner. Sojourner. A traveler in those times. Pag sinalbahi mo siya, or hindi mo tinanggap sa iyong tahanan, you will receive a curse from the gods. So sa konteksto ng story ng Sodom and Gomorrah, the sin of Sodom was the sin not just of inhospitality, but it was a grave sin to sexually abuse, to sexually torture these 2 strangers, these 2 travelers that came peacefully to the house of Lot. At kaya nga, dun sa mga Game of Thrones enthusiasts, one example would be the Red Wedding. The Red Wedding. So sa mga maiintindihan nyo na maunawaan nyo anong ibig ko sabihin when I refer to the Red Wedding as in terms of the hospitality code of the ancient times. So ang mga conservative Christians, masyadong gamit na gamit sa kanila ang story ng Sodom and Gomorrah. Whenever Protestant evangelical pastors would preach against LGBT, one of their favorite stories and verses in the Bible is Genesis 19. And you would rarely hear from them about a parallel story, a similar story in the book of Judges, also in the chapter 19. Judges chapter 19. It's a parallel story. A story of 2 strangers coming to a city by night. One good man receives them into his house. Then the men of the city comes to the good man's house and demands him to bring the man out. The good man comes out and he offers his daughter to the men of the city so that the men of the city can ravish her as they want. No? Parehong-pareho. Parehong-pareho sa Genesis 19. Yun nga lang, unlike sa Genesis 19, sa Genesis 19, hindi natuloy yung walang naganap na, isa pa yan sa mga hindi nila tinitingnan. Isa pa yan sa hindi kinoconsider ng mga conservative Christians. Wala naman pong nangyaring anal rape sa Genesis 19. Hindi natuloy, hindi na-consummate. Pero kung pinipreach nila, para bang nangyari ang ini-imagine nila. So, the gang rape never happened in Genesis 19. But in Judges 19, in the book of Judges, chapter 19, which is the story of the Levite and the concubine, the Levite's concubine, the gang rape happened. It actually happened. And this is a parallel story. Judges 19 is a parallel story with the story of Sodom and Gomorrah in Genesis 19. Now, bakit hindi tinitignan ng conservatives ang story ng Judges 19? At bakit hindi nila pinipreach yan? Because Judges 19 will give you an idea what Genesis 19, what it was really about. And again, it has nothing to do with homosexuality as we understand it today. It has nothing to do with sexuality generally, as we understand today. What we know today is that any form of rape and sexual abuse is not acceptable. Is not acceptable at all. The book of the prophet Ezekiel tells us what is the sin of Sodom. Sinasabi sa atin ng libro ng propeta Ezekiel kung ano ba talaga ang naging kasalanan ng Sodom. So let us go to the book of Ezekiel, chapter 16. As I live, says the Lord God, your sister Sodom and her daughters have not done as you and your daughters have done. This was the guilt of your sister Sodom. She and her daughters had pride, excess of food, prosperous ease, but did not aid the poor and the needy. They were haughty, and did abominable things before me. Therefore I removed them when I saw it. Tagalogin ko, translate ko sa Tagalog. Habang ako'y nabubuhay, sabi ng Panginoong Diyos, ang iyong kapatid na si Sodom at ang kanyang mga anak ay hindi ginawa ang tulad ng ginawa mo at ng iyong mga anak. Ito ang naging kasalanan o sala, naging sala ng iyong kapatid na si Sodom. Siya at ang kanyang mga anak ay mapagmataas. Sobra-sobra ang pagkain. Merong prosperity. Tagalog ng prosperity. Merong prosperity. Pero, hindi niya tinulungan ang mga mahihirap at may mga pangangailangan. Siya ay mayabang at arugante at ginagawa ang lahat ng mga masasamang bagay, karumal-dumal na bagay sa aking harapan. Kaya naman siya ay inalis ko nang nakita ko. So ano daw ang kasalanan ng Sodom at Gomorrah? Or ng Sodom? Ayon sa propetang Ezekiel. At ang pagkasulat nito ay as if ang Diyos ang nagsasalita. Di ba? As I live, says the Lord God. So, it is God speaking through the words and the voice of the prophet Ezekiel. At ang kasalanan ng Sodom ay ang kanyang pagiging mapagmataas, pagiging mayabang, at ang napakayaman niya, napaka-wealthy niya, pero hindi niya tinulungan ang mga nangangailangan at mga mahihirap. Yan ang kasalanan ng Sodom. Ngayon, ilan ba sa mga mega churches ang napakayayaman, ngunit walang pagtulong sa mga higit na nangangailangan? Na ang kanilang mga pastor at mga simbahan ay pagkalaki-laking multi-million dollar. Ang pastor nila ay multi-millionaire na merong multi-million mansions. Ilan mga conservative Christian ang mapanghusga at mayayabang, mapagmataas, feeling sila lang ang anak ng Diyos. Baka hindi kaya sila ang nagko-commit ng sin of Sodom? Hindi kaya baka ang ilang mga Kristiyano o maraming mga Kristiyano ang tunay na mga sodomite or sodomizers? Pag-isipan natin. So what we have found out today in our analysis of the story of Sodom is that, number one, it has nothing to do with the mutually consensual intimacy and relationship of gay men as we know it today. That the sin of Sodom is about abuse, sexual torture, sexual assault against the hospitality code of the ancient world. That the sin of Sodom is about arrogance and about being wealthy but not helping the poor and the needy. These are the sins of Sodom. And that I pray that during this Pride Month, that we reclaim ourselves, we reclaim these stories to say that this is not about us. This is not about the LGBT community or about gay men in loving relationships. And that we have to be very careful in how we understand, how we read the Bible and the scripture. That we have to consider the context of the Bible and we have to analyze carefully the Bible, the scriptures, the text of the Bible. And that the ones who are truly sodomites, the true sodomites, ang mga tunay na mga sodomites and sodomizers are those who are arrogant and those who are not helping the poor and the needy. And in the words of Jesus, in Matthew 25, whatever you have done to the least of these, you have done it to me. If you do not help the poor, you have done that to Jesus. If you are arrogant to the poor, you have done that to Jesus. Whether you are gay or straight or anything in between. This is Pastor Joseph San Jose of Open Table Metropolitan Community Church. Haba ng pangalan namin, no? This is Pastor Joseph San Jose of Open Table Church. Again, greeting you. Happy Pride.
Hello, hello, hello. Carry na ba direct? Ayan. So yung video presentation namin was shot in, I think, 2019. So past, ano na yan? Past video na yan. Wait lang, nagdo-double sound ako. Saan ba nagagaling yung sound? Hello? Ayan. Okay, so ito yung portion ng question and answer for our Facebook Live. And again, the video presentation was in 2019 when we did the homosexuality and the Bible. We did a workshop back then during Sunday, and then we recorded a separate one for our social media accounts. Ang hindi lang yata namin na shoot ay yung sa sa Leviticus. So the rest of the explanation for the other Bible verses, Leviticus, Romans, sa Corinthians, we do have the explanation sa yung Leviticus nga wala, but the Romans, Genesis, Corinthians nasa YouTube namin. So you just have to look for Open Table MCC sa YouTube. But I'm also doing this live question and answer for the first time. So that if you have other questions na hindi malinaw regarding the story of Sodom, I can answer them. And if you have other questions regarding queer theology, church history, or other things about biblical interpretation, I can give some, opinion or perspective about it. I do not claim to know everything. I am not God to know everything or to know the mind of God. So what I will be answering today are a few things that I know from seminary and from some of my readings. At if you can see, iba yung background, nasa bahay ako. So I'm live from home sa Laguna. So if you have questions, please put them in the chat, in our live chat. And nakikita ko siya from my iPad, ang inyong question. So just put your questions or even your commentary dun sa naging presentation in the live chat, so that we can see and appreciate what you think about the presentation. Ano pa ba? Just a few things, no? If you put your questions there, but we will not entertain any abusive language, any homophobic, transphobic, biphobic, any intolerant language, comment, or question, we will not entertain or tolerate. We are also not here to argue or to debate, no? Hindi intention ng event na ito na makipagdebate. So I will also not answer questions. Meron kasi minsan diba, siguro na experience nyo naman na to. Minsan merong nagtatanong, hindi naman talaga nagtatanong. Nagtatanong kasi gustong mamahiya, nagtatanong, alam niya naman na yung sagot, pero nagtatanong kasi gusto lang mang-insulto. We also will not entertain any of those. Okay, so merong question. Hi, where is your church located po and is it open? Yung kanina na video that was in our chapel, chapel/office sa Mandaluyong. So we are located sa Mandaluyong City. Katabi lang namin ang GA Tower condominiums. No, and we are just across Boni MRT station. No, although yung entrance ng building namin nasa likod na street, no, along Sierra Madre Street. For the information, you may visit our website opentablemcc.ph. Andun yung address, andun yung photo nung building. We are renting so hindi siya like cathedral, okay? I hope we can have a cathedral someday, but right now we are renting a small space, a small room that can fit around 30 to 40 people dun sa building na iyon. No? So are we open? No, not yet. All of our services right now ay online pa din. Everything is online. We are not yet meeting in person kasi nga hinihintay pa natin ang bakuna, no? Mabakunahan ang marami sa atin at pati na rin sa amin sa yung mga leaders, volunteers saka mga members ng church. Hindi pa lahat ay nababakunahan. So we will announce an opening once most of us have been vaccinated. Question, where did the third angel go? Hindi ko alam. Walang sinabi. As far as I know, walang may sinabi atang direction kung saan siya pupunta, pero walang sinabi kung saan talaga exactly yung next destination nung hindi natin maintindihan kung angel ba o God ba, no? Kasi dun sa story in Genesis 18, the three entities were as if they are gods, or as if they are God, Yahweh, no? Manifested and represented by the three entities, the three persons. Pero nung napunta na sa story ng Sodom, nung dalawa na lang yung pumunta doon, angel na, no? Angel na ang sa kanya. We don't know saan pumunta yung naiwan na angel at saan siya nagtungo. So we don't know. Sige, ano pa po? Questions? If you have questions, hindi lang naman sa story ng Sodom, if you have other questions about queer theology, about MCC, I'll be happy to answer or try my best to answer. Kasi baka may mga tanong kayo na hindi ko rin naman masasagot. And I will be open to say if I don't know the answer or I am not sure of the answer. So, yun lang ba ang tanong natin? We have 10 people with us. Do you have any advice on parents that don't want their child to be gay because they think there is still young to understand? Paano ba? Well, saan ba yung conversation ko nito no isang araw? Ang palagi kong sinasabi at siguro advice ko sa parents ay anak nyo yan. Anak nyo yan. No matter what, anak nyo yan, sa inyo nanggaling yan. At kahit hindi nyo naiintindihan, kahit hindi nyo nauunawaan yung anak ninyo at yung kanyang yung umuusbong niyang sexuality or gender identity, kahit hindi nyo naunawaan o naiintindihan, always respond in love. Okay? Always respond in love and kindness and acceptance. And on the core principle na anak nyo, sila. You know, I even said in another talk na it's not just that you don't understand, even if you disagree. Diba? Even if you disagree kasi turo ng simbahan ninyo, turo ng na kinalakahan yung simbahan na masama ang pagiging LGBT, pagiging gay or lesbian or trans, no? Kahit yun yung paniniwala ninyo, pwede pa rin naman kayong mag-respond sa anak nyo in a way that is loving. Even if you don't agree, even if you don't understand yet, always respond out of love for your child. And well, respond out of love na hindi violent. Respond out of love na hindi sila masasaktan. Kasi merong mag-argue. Kaya nga dinidisiplina ko yung anak ko na wag maging bakla kasi mahal ko siya. No. No. That's a no. Respond out of love and kindness to your child, even if you don't understand, even if you don't know what to say. even if you actually disagree, because that's what your church told you. Always just go back to the fact that this is your child. Okay? And that wala nang ibang tatanggap sa kanya, wala nang ibang magmamahal sa kanya, kundi ang ikaw na magulang niya. No? At it is not about you as a parent. It is not about you as a parent. So don't make it about you. Minsan may mga magulang din na pag sinabing gay, pag nalaman nilang gay, lesbian, trans yung anak or bisexual yung anak, suddenly the focus becomes on the parent na parang anong ginawa kong mali, anong kasalanan ko, or lahat na ibinigay ko na sa iyo, ganito pa ang igaganti mo, magiging bakla ka pa. This is not about you as a parent. This is about your child. So again, respond in love, respond in kindness, respond in a better way, even if you don't understand or know. Okay, other questions? May queer ba na tao, queer relationship na nabanggit sa Biblia? Si Ivan talaga nagtanong, di ba? Hi Ivan. Sabihin mo lang kung kailan yung kung kailan yung launching ng career mo. Pupunta kami at susuportahan ka. Charing. Antay dito, si Ivan, may queer ba na tao? Of course, there are queer people in the Bible. For July, ayoko i-preempt, pero sa July, we will do queer love stories in the Bible. So there are a few queer love stories in the Bible. At pag-uusapan natin yan, ipe-present din natin yan sa ngayong all Sundays, at 3 Sundays of July. Pero meron, to answer the question, meron. And some of the queers, what can be considered as queer in the Bible, yung mga eunuchs. No? They can be considered as they can be loosely considered as one of the queer people in ancient times, and also in the Bible when they're mentioned in the Bible. May pahabol pala sa July. Okay, yeah. So meron tayo sa July. Queer love stories in the Bible. Ano pang question? May questions po kayo? Katanungan, manifestations? Ito, Sodom and Gomorrah, are these real cities or are they fictional cities? As far as I know, wala pang evidence, wala pang archaeological evidence na nahanap o natagpuan to prove the existence of the city of Sodom and Gomorrah. Wala pa. I might be wrong, but as far as I know right now, wala pang nahanap na archaeological site or archaeological evidence to prove that there was really a city of Sodom. Now, baka meron kayong makitang mga website dyan, i-check nyo mabuti kung fake news yan, kasi there are some people there are some articles I saw who claims to be natagpuan na ang city ng Sodom. And pag chinek mo, it's actually fake news. No? So if ever you find such articles, check very well if it's a credible source. And if it is a credible source, please let me know. Because as far as I know right now, wala pang evidence for the city of Sodom. Pillar of salt, literal ba na naging asin ang asawa ni Lot? Yun yung sabi sa story. Yun yung sabi sa kwento, naging pillar of salt yung asawa. At merong antag dito, malapit sa Dead Sea, no, sa Holy Land, sa Palestine, Israel, Jordan border. Meron doon kasi doon daw yung I mean the non-scientific, non-proven, one way of explaining things, yung Dead Sea daw, and the area of the Dead Sea is where Sodom was. No? But again, wala, as far as I know, wala pang evidence. Pero yun yung claim. The claim that the city of Sodom was either the Dead Sea na napuno na ng salty water or sa within the area. No? And then doon sa Dead Sea, merong isang area doon na merong pillar of salt. At ang Cheka, yun daw yung asawa ni Lot na naging asin, no? You can check that out in Google, the pillar of salt. May mga photos 'yan. Pero yun yung sabi sa kwento, no? Ang sabi sa kwento, yung asawa ni Lot, hindi natin diniscuss dun sa presentation. Pero after the destruction of, or during the destruction of Sodom, tumatakas si Lot at yung kanyang pamilya. Ang sabi sa kanila ng mga ambiguous angel/God entity, huwag kayong titingin, huwag niyong lilingunin muli yung city of Sodom. Otherwise, may mangyayaring hindi maganda sa inyo. So, yung asawa niya lumingon pabalik, yun according to the kwento, naging pillar of salt. So yun yung sabi sa kwento. Now, can we prove it? Can we know that it is factually true? We don't know. We don't have any way of knowing it as fact. Some LGBT people claim na naging straight sila with the help of praying at pagbabalik loob sa Diyos. Ano pong masasabi nyo dito? I don't know what happened to them or anong karanasan nila o anong nangyayari sa kalooban nila. But I will not invalidate their experience or their claim. If ang kanilang pakiramdam ay tunay nga nagbago na, hindi na sila gay, hindi na sila lesbian, o edi well and good, no? Karanasan nila yun experience nila yun but at the same time, in the same respect, they cannot, ang masasabi ko dyan, hindi nila pwedeng i-impose yung kanilang naging karanasan sa karanasan ng iba. Diba? Kung may nangyayari sa kanila at sabi nila ay na-cure na sila, nagamot na sila sa kanilang homosexuality, yun yung kanilang, so may nangyayari sa kanila. At ang interpretation nila doon, ang kanilang paniniwala doon, sila ay ginamot ng Panginoon. Yun yung claim nila I cannot invalidate that, we cannot invalidate that. But that experience cannot be imposed upon or cannot be said that it is universal. Okay? The other thing that I want to say is some people who have claimed that, may mga taong nag-claim niyan, di ba? Especially sa Exodus, yung conversion therapy group, international group dati na Exodus International. Ang dami doon, may mga pa-testimony pa na, yan, binago na ako ng Panginoon, hindi na ako gay, may asawa na ako, at indeed, nag-asawa nga sila ng babae, or yung lesbian, nag-asawa ng lalaki. And then, after how many years, they go back and say, many of them said, I was not cured. I was only deluding myself. I was only making myself believe. Pero andun pa rin siya. And many of the leaders of Exodus International apologized for their conversion therapy. So I will not invalidate the experience of some who claim that they have been cured by God. Yan ang kanilang paniniwala sa kung ano man ang nangyayari sa kanilang kalooban. But again, it is not universal. And that there have been instances, many instances, that some of those people later on would, backtrack or, bawiin yung kanilang sinasabi. Yun. Siguro yun ang ano ko, masasabi ko dyan. Malinaw ba ang aking ang linya direct? Baka daldal ako ng daldal, hindi pala malinaw ang audio. Okay, malinaw daw, sabi ni Direct Chris. Ano pa? Parang tayo-tayo lang nag-uusap. Walang ibang nagtatanong. Ang tawag dito, some LGBT people advise, sige, ito muna. Advice for young LGBT who are minors and who live with conservative or homophobic families. Okay. At naranasan namin ito, no? We ilang beses ko na ito na-mention sa mga sermon ko. We had experience of LGBT young people. Well, dalawa. At the start of the pandemic, na sila ay na-trap sa kanilang conservative na tahanan. No? At least nung walang pandemic, they can go to school, they can be themselves sa school, they can have level of freedom outside of their homophobic na pamilya, na bahay. But then the pandemic happened and many young LGBTQI+ na mga bata, mga teenagers ang na-trap sa homophobic, transphobic, ultra-conservative families nila. And that is unfortunate. And we have encountered a few of them. Hindi ko alam kung anong ma-advise ko kasi I can just imagine how difficult, how very difficult, how very yung emotional and mental stress nila that they're experiencing being trapped at home with their families. Siguro, and what I'm about to say might not really make sense as of the moment for some of those young people. But again, uulit-ulitin lang natin yung mensahe ng Diyos sa pamamagitan ng MCC na hindi ka kasalanan, hindi ka nagkakasala, hindi ka masama. Kahit yan pa ang sabihin ng iyong magulang, sabihin ng iyong mga kapatid, kahit naririnig mo yan sa kanila, hindi ka masama, hindi ka nagkakasala, hindi ka mali. Walang mali sa iyo, walang dapat na baguhin sa iyo. And that God loves you the way that God made you as an LGBTQI+ person. Ano pang masasabi ko? Yun, if you have any way to have virtual support, kahit man lang virtual support, reach out to your friends, reach out to us sa MCC, Open Table MCC, like what the other umattend sa amin before. Reach out to us. Ngayon merong ng Balor Kanlungan ng UP Babaylan at ng Patas. It is a virtual safe space. It is a program, a virtual community na ino-offer nila for specifically for young LGBTQ. No? And we are one of isa tayo sa mga nag-donate dun sa Open Table, donated some funds to their program, no? For safe space. So you can search for them. No? Balor Kanlungan. Ongoing na yan sila. Pangatlo, siguro sasabihin ko sa young people, kapit lang, hold on, huwag ka mawala ng pag-asa. I acknowledge and I know na mahirap, masakit, and there's a lot of mental stress. But as much as possible, hold on. Hold on. Reach out to people who can support you and who can be there for you, even if it is just virtual. No? And that someday, I am hoping that someday, makakalaya ka. And panghawakan mo yun. Panghawakan mo yung idea na makakalaya ka rin. Independence Day ngayon, no? O nga pala, Independence Day. Hindi lang Happy Pride, isang mapagpalayang Independence Day. And I hope someday, if you are there, if you are listening, young LGBTQ individuals, kayong mga kabataang LGBTQ na nasa conservative na mga bahay, makakalaya ka rin. You will be free. No? And we claim that. Okay, mahaba na. Ano to? Advice. Okay. As an LGBT couple, it is hard for us to feel accepted at home. Both sides of our families are conservative and homophobic Christians. We've tried and tried to explain our situation, but their minds are closed. What should we do? Kung ginawa nyo na lahat ng pwede nyong gawin for your family to accept you, to understand you, talagang bonggang-bonggang effort na ang ginawa nyo, pero ayaw pa rin, or hindi talaga sila makapagbukas, then you have to let go. You have to let go. And just pray for it. Pray for it na baka naman someday, they will come to their senses. Maybe someday, by some mysterious power of God, they will open up. No? Although, wag din tayo mag-expect. But you have to let go because buhay nyo rin naman yan eh. It is also your lives. At the end of the day, no matter how much we love our families and no matter how much our families love us, it is still our lives. It is still your life, and you have to live your life. You have to live your happiness. You have to live your dreams. I don't know if you are watching the series Pose, no? At mas matindi at napakatindi ng mga struggles ng mga stories at characters dun sa series na Pose. If your family cannot accept you and love you no matter how much you tried, try to look for chosen family. Family is not just by blood. Although I understand, naiintindihan ko yan, masakit na yung pamilya natin, mahal natin sila pero hindi tayo matanggap at masakit yun. But if that is the case, then we have to also accept that family is not just about blood. It is also about the people who will support you, who will love you, and sometimes those people are not your blood family, but are chosen family. So if you have friends, if you have communities who will celebrate you, celebrate your relationship, celebrate you as individuals, then that is your family. That is your people. And let's just hope and pray that at some point your blood families will accept you in the future. Sana. Pero kung hindi, wala tayong magagawa. Ganun talaga. Ano po kaya ang another question, ano po kaya yung nag-contribute kung bakit naidikit yung kwento ng Sodom sa homosexuality? Siguro po terms of translation, interpretation, political motivation, culture. Yes. Mag-agree lang ako dun sa lahat ng sinabi mo. You actually answered the question, you know. Yeah. It's all of those things. Misinterpretation. You know, in some interpretations becomes the popular interpretation over time, as if that's the only interpretation over time. Yun, kaya ganun. I cannot add any more to what you've said. Everything you said is actually the reasons why dumikit, naging stigma sa story ng Sodom at Gomorrah yung association niya with with homosexuality. 'Di ba nga na-imbento because of the story of Sodom and the interpretation of that story, na-imbento yung salitang sodomite or sodomy, no? Wala pong word na sodomy sa Bible. Sa original Hebrew language, there is no such word as the word sodomy, sodomite, sodomizer is a modern terminology derived from the anti-homosexual interpretation of the story of Sodom and Gomorrah. So pero yun, ganun talaga. Kaya we open Table MCC and other MCC churches in the world and other yung iba pang mga progressive churches around the world na nagbubukas na. We continue to explain year after year about the anti-LGBT interpretations of the Bible. Kahit na for halimbawa sa akin or some of the active members ng MCC, umay na kami dyan. No? Umay na kami dyan. But we have to continue on explaining these things, these interpretations of the Bible para magkaroon ng linaw. Hindi na siya gamitin at hindi na natin paniwalaan tayong LGBT, hindi na natin siya paniwalaan na ito ay tumutukoy sa atin. So yon. Ano pa ba? LGBT. May other questions pa po ba or comments about the presentation today? Again, if you want to get to know the other the explanation, the discussion about Genesis 1 and Genesis 2, nasa YouTube channel namin yan. If you want to understand also Romans, the letter of Paul to the Romans, at yung sinasabi din sa Corinthians, sa first letter of Paul to the Corinthians, nasa YouTube na. Ang wala lang talaga doon yung Leviticus, I think, kasi na hindi namin na-record for some reason, hindi ko na maalala, hindi namin na-record yun sa Leviticus. Okay? Hindi ba talaga na i-record? Basta alam ko may isang anti-LGBT interpretation and passage na hindi namin na i-record. Pero everything else nandun sa aming YouTube channel. Sabi ni Direk, Leviticus nga yun, hindi na i-record. So yon, happy Pride ha. Happy Pride to everyone. Happy, I wouldn't say if it is Happy Independence Day. Kasi tanungin natin ng ating mga sarili kung tunay ba talaga tayong malaya. No? So, especially tayong mga LGBT, tunay ba tayong malaya sa Pilipinas? So, nakita ko nga yung isang post, isang meme kanina na you are not free. Masyado lang mahaba yung chain. Hindi ka malaya, masyado lang mahaba yung tanikala. Sabi ng isang meme. Ano ba? Pride Month. Yeah, questions po. At din, siyempre, expect nyo na, I will promote our online content. At salamat po kay Christopher Celeste. Siya po ang aming main technical IT and graphics person. Volunteer sa Open Table. Lahat po ng aming, hindi naman lahat, pero 99% or 98% ng aming online content ay siya ang nag-i-edit, siya ang nag-create ng mga graphics. So thank you, Chris, for your very good effort at alam kong exhausted effort for our online ministry. Professional graphic artist siya and website developer. So hanapin nyo lang po yung kanyang website na Celeste Graphics. If you want, ang nakalagay doon, affordable, website and other online content. O yan ha, may pag-plug. So yan po. Ano pa ba? Graphics. Next Sunday. Ano ba yung next Sunday? Next Saturday. Next Saturday, yung aming webinar about freedom of religion and SOGI Equality Bill. No? So we will have a webinar. Mag-register po kayo if you want to join the Zoom. Gusto nyong makinig in the actual Zoom. Mag-register po kayo. Naka-post sa Facebook namin, sa Twitter namin, at sa Instagram yung registration. And yung poster, video poster. Speaker natin si Attorney Claire De Leon ng Lagablab Network at ng Babaylanes. Tapos may special message tayo. Nagpadala ng special message si Senator Riza Ontiveros, yung champion ng SOGI Equality Bill and many other rights bill, no? Women's rights, health rights, mental health, laws on mental health, women, ganyan. And again, LGBT, SOGI Equality Bill. So mayroon siyang pinadalang message for our webinar and for SOGI Equality Bill. So please register. 4 p.m. siya, ibo-broadcast din siya sa Facebook Live. Sino ba bang speaker natin doon? So Attorney Claire's, message from Senator Risa, magbibigay ng kanyang theological input si Dr. Michael Campos, and then we also have a representative from National Council of Churches in the Philippines. I think si Pastora Carlene. Si Reverend Carlene Nomorosa ang magde-deliver ng message ng National Council of Churches in the Philippines. And we will have a discussion on SOGI Equality Bill and freedom of religion. Talaga bang sinasaklawan o nilalabag ng SOGI Bill ang freedom of religion? Yan ang ating i-discuss kasi yan ang ini-invoke ngayon ng mga conservative Christians. Pag sinasalag nila o ino-oppose nila yung SOGI Equality Bill, ang ini-invoke nila ay freedom of religion or the human right to religious belief and practice. So we want to discuss na hindi naman siya hindi naman sinasaklawan ng SOGI Equality Bill ang freedom of religion. And then ngayon umuusbong din yung comprehensive anti-discrimination bill. Parang yun yata yung mas gustong ipasa ng mga legislators, ng mga Congress people at ng Senate kesa dun sa SOGI Equality Bill. Meron ba itong pagkakaiba? Anong pagkakaiba nito? Is the comprehensive anti-discrimination bill, is it really better than SOGI Equality Bill or is it less? No? So pag-usapan natin yan next week 4 p.m. Please register if you want to join the Zoom. Yon. Ano pa? So we are in social media, sa Instagram, sa Facebook, sa Twitter, sa Apple Podcast, sa Spotify, andun din kami. So just search us, all of our content nandun. Weekly sermon and preaching nandun, worship service nandun. Some of our statements on some issues nandun. So just search us, just search for Open Table MCC. Or opentablemcc.ph. So kung wala na pong magtatanong, wala na bang hahabol? Any other questions, comments, feedback? Baka po may feedback kayo. kasi nananatili tayong 10 people sa Facebook Live. So I'm wondering if the rest of the people with us to this afternoon, if you have other questions or feedback for us. Yes, nagpakalbo na po ako. Not related po sa Sodom, pero nagagamit din against LGBT. Ano po ang masasabi niyo sa paggamit ng creation story to justify the binary male and female as the only sexual gender categories? Sige, sagutin ko yan ng mabilis lang. Pero yun, sasabi ko kanina, yes, nagpakalbo na ako. Baka permanent na ito na ako'y nagpakalbo kasi talagang napapanot na itong harapan ko. Hindi na siya maganda talaga tignan in person. Ano? Hindi siya halata sa mga videos ko. Slightly halata, pero pag nagkita tayo in person, tsaka na siya. Very pangit na siya. So I'd rather be like this than, nagpipilit sa buhok. Yan. Something that is not theological or biblical. Not related, yung sa Genesis story. Again, the comprehensive explanation of the Genesis portion nasa YouTube namin. You can search it. But real quickly, one analysis of the story by Dr. Renato Lings, at yun yung reference natin for that in the YouTube discussion. Hindi po male and female ang ginawa ng Diyos nung umpisa. Hindi. Nung pinag-aralan maigi yung mga salitang ginamit sa Hebrew at i-analyze mo yung Genesis 1. Buksan nga natin Genesis 1, I think it's in 26. Yeah, tama. Genesis 1:26. Then God said, "Let us make humankind in our image and according to our likeness, and let them have dominion over the fish of the sea, over the birds of the air," etc., etc. Ang tawag dito, that creeps, yan. So Genesis 26, saan yung A? Pero yung word na ginamit, yung, di ba, sabi niya, let us make humankind. The word that was used, then God said, let us make Adam in our image according to our likeness. At hindi Adam in small letter A. At ang Hebrew pa nga niyan, let us create ha-Adam in our image. And the word ha, pag dinidikit yung salitang ha, H-A, that is actually the article the, or sa Tagalog, ang. Sa English, T-H-E, the. Let us create the Adam. So hindi sinabing, let us create Adam, na pangalan Adam. Let us create a thing. Let us create Adam. At yung word na Adam, galing yan sa word na Adama, meaning pulang lupa, red soil. So at least in the NRSV translation, sa translation ng New Revised Standard Version, kinorek na nila yung translation to say, let us make, translate nila yung Adam to humankind. Let us make humankind in our image. Sa ibang translation and the older translation, ang translation niyan, let us create man. Let us create man. Pero hindi nga man yung create. What was created was, pwede yung translation ng humankind, or the other more literal translation is earthling. Earthling. Kasi taken from the earth. Taken from the soil. So let us create an earthling. Let us create a soil thing. And let us create it in our image and in our likeness. So hindi totoo na lalaki ang unang nilikha ng Diyos. Ang nilikha niya ay earthling. or humankind sa translation ng NRSV. And in the Genesis story, in Genesis 1, sabay niya silang nilikha, male and female. So one interpretation in looking at the actual Hebrew of it is that actually what God created as the first human, the first earthling, was actually a hermaphrodite. Well, old term na ang hermaphrodite. Someone who had, well, that's one interpretation. Either it is a hermaphrodite, someone who had both male and female sexes, biological sexes, or it is someone who is walang sex, either of those interpretations. But we'll go with the interpretation of God created an earthling that was hermaphrodite, dalawang sexes into one single being. And then if you go to Genesis 2, pag pumunta tayo sa Genesis 2, which is a separate creation story, if you will read on biblical scholars, these are actually two separate creation stories. If you go to Genesis 2, yung story naman na kinuha sa tadyang ng lalaki ang babae, hindi rin yung totoo. Kasi yung ginamit na salita na translate as tadyang, hindi naman talaga siya tadyang sa Hebrew. No? It was actually the proper translation should have been side. Because that particular tsela yata yung Hebrew word. I'm forgetting my Hebrew language. But the Hebrew that was here, that was used, was never ever used as rib. It has always been used as side. Tagiliran. No? Tagiliran ng bahay, tagiliran ng mesa, tagiliran ng side, basta side, gilid or kabilang gilid, ganyan. At ito yung sinasabi kanina nung isang nag-comment, ikaw din pala yung nag-comment nun, no? Si Lloyd din yung nag-comment, yung sinasabing problem of translation. Nakuha natin yung rib nung translate ni Jerome, Saint Jerome, yung Hebrew Bible into Latin Vulgate, no? Yung Latina Vulgata ng Bible. Nung tinatranslate niya into Latin, naghahanap siya ng word in Latin na would best fit or translate the Hebrew one. At ang ginamit niya ay the Latin for rib, the Latin for tadyang. So, yun ang naging popular na hindi lang interpretation kundi translation. Pero side. So, alam ko mahaba na. So, ang basically, at nandun nga to sa YouTube namin, in the study, and the scholarly study of Dr. Renato Lings, ang sabi niya, ang ginawa ng Diyos nung umpisa, hindi naman kinuha yung tadyang. Ang ginawa ng Diyos, the hermaphrodite earthling, the human earthling, was split into two. So that there will be a male and a female. Pero yun nga, the first earthling was not man, was not male, and it was not a proper name, at least in the beginning of the story. It was Ha-Adam, an earthling, a soiling, or in the translation of the NRSV, a humankind. And then if we follow the translation in the study of Dr. Renato Lings, God split this earthling into two. One would be male, one would be female. But that is to say that the first human was actually intersex. The first human was hermaphrodite. The first human had both male and female. So you can argue, you can theologize that the first human was actually transgender somewhat. and if we go further on that theology, when we say that humankind was created in God's image and likeness, it means that God is both male and female. God can also be transgender or intersex. Ano pa bang issue niyan sa binary? Another interpretation about the Genesis story about God creating male and female, night and day, ang tawag dito, night and day, it's not to say that there are only night and day. I forgot the theologian who argued this. Many people have already argued this na Genesis, the author of Genesis, did not say by saying that there is male and female, that there is night and day, that there is land and sea, did not intended to say na ang meron lang talaga sa mundo ay lupa at dagat. Ang meron lang sa mundo ay langit at lupa, or meron lang sa mundo ay gabi at umaga. By saying that there is male and female, by saying that there is night and day, by saying that there is land and sea, is to set the extreme, to set that there is something that is more in between. No? Hindi lang siya about night and day, there is also afternoon and early morning, that there is land and sea, but there is also the shore where land and sea meet. You know, there is so many things in creation that are in between. You know, and that there are mammals. Mammals are land animals, but there are mammals in the sea. You know, there are fishes in the sea that should be in water, but we have flying fish who also take, you know, and we have a lot of animals na lives both underwater and also on land. No? Tulad ng palaka, tulad ng sea turtles, diba? So, in the same breath, when God said that there is male and female, that is not just an exact category of male and female. And just like what we see in all of God's creation, there are things that are in between male and female. So, yeah, it's a napakahabang discussion. But if you want to, we have a video of that in our YouTube. Okay, so I think that's it. Kung wala na, may hahabol po ba? Anyone? Any other? Clarification? Question? Feedback? So kung wala na po, thank you for joining us for this afternoon. If you have other questions that you might think of, you can email us ministry@opentablemcc.ph. Yan yung email address namin, ministry@opentablemcc.ph. Okay? And tomorrow we have our worship service, an online worship service as we do every Sunday. You can join us. Naka din siya, broadcast din siya. Pero if you want to join us for the conversation, no, after worship, meron kaming pag-uusap, conversation, kamustahan, at the same time, pag-uusapan yung naging sermon. You can join us sa aming Zoom conversation. You just have to go through the link, no, and be with us. Ang Pride Month namin, Pride Month sermon series, pag Sunday preaching series is God Loves the Queer Me. What's next? Diba? Mahal ako ng Diyos bilang LGBT. O ano ngayon? Anong kasunod? So yun ang aming preaching for all Sundays of June. which also started as early as May 23. So pang-apat na yata yung bukas, no, na preaching. So if you want to listen to the preaching, past preachings for Pride Month, nasa YouTube din namin. If you want to join us for tomorrow and the succeeding Sundays, please be with us and just go to the link, join us aming Zoom conversation. So yun lang po. I think that's it. I hope we can have something like this in the future again. And happy Pride. Happy Pride sa ating lahat, sa inyong lahat. Ang Pride ay hindi lang happy. Ang Pride ay hindi lang celebration. Ang Pride ay isang protesta at pagsusulong ng karapatang pantao, hindi lang ng LGBT, pero ng lahat. Pride is protest. Pride is activism. Sulong, backlash. Okay? Thank you. Rainbow blessings sa lahat, sa inyong lahat. No? Rainbow blessings kay Ivan. Rainbow blessings kay Isaiah. Kay Lloyd. Hello po. God bless. Rainbow blessings sa inyo. At salamat kay Chris. At sa lahat po ng nanood sa atin. May the God of rainbows and of everything that is in between and beyond be with you all. Amen.